we begin, I wanted to let you know a few things about upcoming events on campus. We have a jazz performance from Arturo Sandoval on October 21st at 7:30 in Chevet Concert Hall. On the 28th, we have a musical performance from a local band, Magic Sword, that's at 6:30. And on the 29th, we have another musical act, Like a Villain, at 6 p.m. And then on the 25th, we have the second lecture in my series, which is Nancy Cohen. She's coming in to discuss gender and its role in this 2016 election with her lecture titled The Year Feminism Won, the 2016 Election in Perspective. This event is free. It's on October 25th at 7:30 in Kilworth Chapel. But let's get on to the lecture currently happening. In thinking about lectures programming this year, I had two very big goals. The first was a focus on personal narrative as the center of the lecture, and the second was bringing in local speakers from the Tacoma area. We are very lucky tonight to have Shalisa Hayes joining us, a woman who embodies what it means to affect change and foster community through the power of personal narrative. Shalisa has transformed loss, pain, and grief into community action and philanthropy. Her focus and vision are a powerful reminder of the incredible impact one life can have on an entire community. Not only that, but Shalisa reminds us of the powerful potential of community as a mobilized and engaged creator of change. I'm very, very, very excited to introduce the founder of Mothers of Magnitude and the Billy Ray Shirley III Foundation, Shalisa Hayes, as she tells us our story and inspires us tonight.
Move this a little closer, so you guys have to scream at me if I get a little too loud. Still a little high off my coffee, so I'll try to be calm as well as keep you all awake. So thank you for having me. Thank you for showing up tonight. I know it's been a long week for many, a long day. I promise you Friday is near. You all like stories, and boy, do I have one for you. I want to first, before I dive in, apologize. And I do this because I want to warn people that a piece of this story will likely prick your heart. And so if you feel a little down, I promise that at some point I'll lift you up and we'll have a brighter ending. So I have to take you back before we get to the end goal and tell you a little bit about myself and this young man on the screen. As she said, my name is Shalisa. My nickname is Shay. You're welcome to call me that. My family and friends have referred to me to that as she for many years. So I am a native of Seattle, born and raised. I've been in Tacoma 10 years. Actually, today is my 10-year anniversary of being in Tacoma. I guess that makes me official Tacoman. I don't know if people actually celebrate stuff like that, but it sounded cool this morning. I'm like, 10 years, I've been here. I was raised by a wonderful woman who was in school when she was raising me, a wonderful father who was running his own business as a young entrepreneur. He owned a painting business. And I'm an only child, and sometimes that shows even in my adult years, so I'm a little spoiled. I was very much a daddy's girl. He provided well for my family. And unfortunately, at the age of 23, I was 6. My father was 23. My father was murdered. A Metro bus driver in Seattle found his body in the back of the trunk. And he actually died at the hospital, but he had been beaten to death. And I can't remember what I had for dinner last night, but I can remember that moment when my mother got that phone call. I remember seeing my father the night before, so before the incident happened. I remember watching my mother's reaction. I remember just dealing with death very, very early on in my life. In fact, my father's funeral, the day of his burial, was the day before my 7th birthday. So you can imagine there was no party going on. Now my mother, strong as she is, she did her best to make sure I had it. She made me a cake and she gave me some gifts, but it was not very happy around our house. So I think back to how my mother reacted to that, and she had now become a single parent, providing for a child. She lost her first love, so it was very, very hard on her. And unfortunately, as a mechanism to cope, she turned to drugs and alcohol. So I grew up in a home where struggle was very, very real. I became someone who was living in poverty. Projects, welfare, everything, you name it, I've been through it. And unfortunately, that environment at home, although I was a very intelligent kid, I always I maintained good grades, and even as a teenager, I held a very good job for many, many years. Actually, till the age of 22, I held the same job. So I was able to provide for myself for a little while, or for most of my teenage years. But I can tell you, because of what was happening at home, I was also pushed out to the streets. And so when you think of thugs and gangs and all of that, I was one of those kids who was out on the block. And fortunately, my mother her best friend was my godmother. And between my godmother and family, whether blood or otherwise, they were able to step in and pick up the pieces wherever my mother dropped them. So I have an amazing support system. I learned very early on that you didn't have to be blood to be family. And my mother, even through her struggle, I love her dearly. She was still amazing throughout her life. She just dealt with struggle that many might not have understood. That life experience pushed me to grow up as an individual knowing that no matter what you possess material-wise, no matter what level of income you have, you are not better than anyone. It also taught me that despite your troubles, you can complain about it, or you can get up and figure out how to come up with a solution. Those two very rules, values, things I lived by back then, as I learned them, and I still live by today. It is something I taught my children. I have 2 sons, and so that moves me into this young man on the screen. This is my oldest son, Billy Ray Shirley. We call him Billy Ray. Billy Ray was an average kid. He was funny as heck. You could sit him in the room with anybody at any age, and everybody got along. He was very much a social butterfly. But as I share this story with you, I also want to say, this is always important, because as I highlight the good, I want everybody to understand that he is average. He was not this golden child. He had his moments just like any other teenage kid. In fact, I remember the year this child walked into his 9th grade year. He looked the same, but I couldn't identify that kid. Behavior-wise and things that came out of his mouth, he did not look like the son that I had raised. And so I had to take some drastic measures to kind of bring him back down to earth and make him realize who he was supposed to be. And so, no matter what, he always knew and had experience serving community. In fact, my godmother took him on his first community service event when he was 5. And there was a low-income housing complex that had just been built, and the community had gotten together to build a playground for the kids that lived there. And Billy Ray and his 5-year-old self went out there and scooped wood chips to put it in the playground. And me as an adult going out and mentoring young people that had lived the lifestyle that I had lived, and trying to show them that they don't have to be a product of their environment, I would take him and my other son with me so that they could see young people their age that might be going through a different type of struggle than they were. My sons never had to deal with living on welfare, they never lived in the projects, all those sorts of things. So it was very important for me to make them understand that they were not better than. And so they would interact with these kids, and it also helped ingrain the importance of having empathy for others. So as Billy Ray grew older, at some point when he got to high school, he started to volunteer for a program called Peace Out. That's the shirt he's wearing. And he adored the owners of that organization. It's a nonprofit organization, and he went through their program and continued even when the program was over. He'd still maintain his relationship and go out and support them. And the words on this screen is part of a rap that he wrote while volunteering for them. And it's actually something we engraved on his headstone, and it says, "Every Saturday I volunteer for the best thing on earth. I'm trying to change the world, erasing all the pain and all the hurt." That's something that speaks to Billy Ray's heart, that probably back then I didn't pay much attention to, but Now I look at it and say that's really who he was. Now let's switch gears a little bit. This is me holding a picture of Billy Ray standing outside my home. This is my sister Davida holding a picture of her son Donald. Davida and I say our sisters, not through blood, but through pain. Davida's son Donald and my son Billy Ray are friends. Davida and I weren't friends 5 years ago, but we had mutual friends. We both grew up in Seattle. We knew of each other, but had not connected. And so how ironic for us both coming from Seattle to move to Tacoma, and our sons would become friends. Now, keeping in mind, I didn't know her. In August 2010, if I remember correctly, it was August 4th, so just a couple days ago, 6 years ago, her son Donald was murdered. He was in an alley trying to help stop a gang argument, and he was shot and killed. Donald was Billy Ray's first friend that he had ever lost. Billy Ray had suffered the loss of his grandfather and other uncles and people who had lived their lives fully, but this was his first friend. And I remember I was working in Portland at the weekend of the funeral, and I remember sitting in my hotel room text messaging Billy Ray because I was concerned that he was now going to have to go to this funeral by himself, and I was also concerned about his mental well-being. And so I asked him, how are you doing? And he said, I'm okay, I'm just still in shock that I'm not going to be able to see my friend anymore. And so we talked through it, and his dad was going to take him to the funeral, and that all worked out well. Billy Ray got through it just fine. And then about 6 months later, early 2011, Billy Ray had an epiphany. For whatever reason, during the course of a weekend, this child wanted to make a whole lot of change, and it started with self. First thing he asked me was, Mom, can I go to summer school this summer because I want to make up some of my credits. He had lost some credits during his freshman year when he had enacted money. And I was like, great, I'll pay whatever it costs for you to go and take care of that as long as you take it seriously. A couple days later, he stood up in church, he got saved. I didn't push him to do it, but he had found religion. The other thing that happened was we were driving in the car, going down Portland Avenue in Tacoma, and he looked over to me and he said, Mom, how do you open a community center? And I said, I have absolutely no idea. But if you have children, dealt with children, nieces, nephews, siblings, you know if a child asks you a question, you better have an answer. So I started to ponder, okay, well, you can rent a gym, you could hire some security guards, and then I started to describe to him what a community service center looked like to me, because I had them when I was younger, or I would go into them. And at some point during this discussion, I stopped and just said, wait, why are you thinking about this? And he said, because, Mom, there's nowhere for kids on the east side to go, referring to the east side of Tacoma. And I thought, interesting. And he said, look around, Mom, the kids are hanging out on the street, the kids are playing in the street, there are bicycles everywhere. And I thought, okay, you're on to something. So we continued the conversation, I gave him the information and sent him on his way. Now for me, Billy Ray was very much a deep thinker, so it wasn't unusual for him to have ideas to help others, but this was just very big. And so I didn't know how to guide him, I just gave him some ideas and hoped that he could make use of it. Now, unfortunately, a few months after that conversation, I was at home with my cousin. She and I were planning on cooking dinner together. We went to bed planning what we were going to do the next day. She was spending the night at my house. And at some point during the day, I got a phone call that said Billy Ray had been shot and killed. Now, Billy Ray had been with his friends, had staying over the weekend with them, and so for me to get that call, I didn't know. The person on the phone was asking me, did I know where Billy Ray was, because they had just heard that he was shot and killed. So this was not a police officer on the phone, this was not a hospital, this was my cousin. And If you all know anything about social media, you know social media travels fast. The reason why my cousin found this out was because there were kids on Facebook saying rest in peace to Billy Ray. So I technically found out that my child was dead through Facebook. I called the hospitals. They didn't have any record of Billy Ray Shirley. And that is because Billy Ray Shirley was dead in the building. He never made it to the hospital. I called the police. They wouldn't tell me any information because of course they were still investigating. And they surely weren't going to tell me it was my son because the medical examiner had yet to identify the body laying on the floor. So from 5 a.m. in the morning to 5 p.m. at night, my family sat in agony wondering, with a ray of hope, was that little boy going to walk through the door and say that somebody made a mistake? That didn't happen. And even though we knew that it was likely that he would not, we still held on to hope. But the reason why we thought he might, or I should say might not, was because Billy Ray and a couple of his friends went to a party, an adult party, looking to pick up one of the friends' mothers. So they were an adult establishment. Billy Ray got too close to somebody, bumped into them. They punched Billy Ray. Fight broke out. Billy Ray was shot and killed on his way, running out of the building. So, in my heart, I knew he wasn't coming home because I had two witnesses that knew he was dead. But we were still holding on to that. Now, once I finally got the call from the medical examiner, for whatever reason, a couple days after and working with family to figure out how to plan a funeral because I had never done that before, community center popped in my mind. So I wrote about it in his obituary. I stood up at his funeral of 500 or more people. I have no idea. I printed 500 obituaries. I have none. And I looked at all those young faces in front of me, and I remember all the phone calls and emails and messages I got from young people. And I stood up and talked about Billy Ray, and gave some funny stories about his life, and I said, I can stand here today and smile because I lost one son, but I gained many more. I said, we wanted a community center, we gotta make it happen. And I stopped, I walked off the stage. Now remember, when I had that conversation with Billy Ray, I had no idea how to make a community center happen. So I sure as heck didn't have any idea when I was standing up at that podium. But somewhere in that message, a group of young people held that to their heart and said, we need to make this happen. And 2 days later, I had a phone call that said, come down to this car wash after church. And this nice group of young people were holding a car wash to raise money for a community center. Amazed, in shock, overwhelmed, thankful, any word that you can think of, I felt it at that moment. Because it made me realize that there's a power in words and there's power in dreams. Because that was a dream that Billy Ray had, and those young people believed it. And they raised $713 for this community center. Now, before then, I can't remember ever holding a car wash, so I don't know how much money car washes generally bring in, but $700 to me was a lot of money. So I stood there with $700 and a group of young people, and I had to figure out how to make this community center happen. And that is because, remember, I could sit in the corner and complain about my child being dead, or I could get up and find a solution. I can't bring him back, but maybe I can prevent this from happening to another young person. So we went to work. 2 days after that, me and those young people showed up at a meeting, and any meeting afterwards where we thought that there was somebody there that was important. And elected officials, community leaders, just average citizens, we showed up and said, if a 17-year-old kid can recognize the importance of having a community center or the need for it, we as adults have to do something about it. So I met people who said, I'm in, let's do it. And there were a lot of people who said, I'm in, but I have no idea how to make this happen. But count me in. So we continue to rally that support. And I would say at that moment, Mama Shay was born. I had my kids. My kids were Team Billy Ray. I started the Billy Ray Foundation. And we worked to make the community center happen. We also decided that we would continue Billy Ray's legacy of serving the community. And so after that car wash, and after crashing meetings, these kids did everything they can to raise the awareness about the importance of this community center. They held some fundraisers, and at some point I had to tell them that I don't care how many fundraisers they do, they weren't going to be able to come up with enough money for a community center. So any money we did raise, we used to fund the activities that Team Billy Ray was doing, all of our service community activities. And so this picture is of a young lady. She is now 13, she was 8 at the time, and I adore her so much. But she back then had heard what happened to Billy Ray and what Team Billy Ray was doing, and she decided she wanted to contribute. This 8-year-old beauty put up a lemonade stand and raised money for this community center. And this is a picture of her standing outside of the bank after she made a deposit into the Team Billy Ray bank account. I am fortunate enough to watch her grow up, sometimes much through Facebook. I see her sometimes in public, but between her mother and her, I get to watch through Facebook. And she is our other Team Billy Ray member who is for life. We consider her part of the family because she reminds me that it doesn't matter the age. If you want to be a part of something, if you think something is good, if you want to serve, you can do it. And I am forever grateful for her. Now, we had two things going on. Team Billy Ray was serving the community, and that was our way of indirectly battling violence, because as they were out serving their community, that was helping them develop empathy for people, and that was also keeping them engaged in positive activities so that they didn't find themselves in those spaces where they could be shot and killed. So they got together every month. We would crowd a coffee shop, gather around a big table, and we talk about what we were going to do next in terms of community service. Now, the biggest project we did, and we actually didn't plan, this was done by Peace Out and some other folks, but the biggest and first project we did was a cleanup of a park. And I remember I didn't have to plan it, they just called me and told me to come down, and it was on a bright and early Saturday morning. I remember waking up and looking out the window, and you all know how the weather is of October. It was starting to rain. And I thought, nobody is coming to clean up the park on a rainy day. So I contemplated if I should just go back to bed. But I went anyway, and I'm glad I did, because to this day, I still stand in amazement at the fact that almost 200 people, I believe it was 194 or something like that, almost 200 people in the community showed up to clean this park in honor of Billy Ray. And they did that. The park was chosen because that was the first community service project that Billy Ray had did when he moved to Tacoma. So that was their way of remembering him. We had food, we had kids of all ages, adults. Oh my God, 200 people in the rain. Talk about community getting together. I'm still amazed by that. And so Team Billy Ray took that and they continued, and they planned events over and over again, whether it was feeding the needy, giving clothing to the homeless, and my favorite, which is on your screen, is a mom's dinner. It's a dinner for mothers. If you've never heard the true meaning or the start of Mother's Day, I'll tell you what it is and how it inspired me. I was sitting down having coffee with a couple of my mentors, and we were talking about Mother's Day and doing some things for mothers of deceased children. And I learned that there's a woman named Julia Ward Howe. Shortly after the Civil War, she decided to get mothers together because she believed that she had a feeling that it was unnatural for us to send our sons out to war to be killed. And so she actually created Mother's Day for Peace. And she got mothers together. Now we took that, and my thought was, we may not be at war. Yeah, we got some wars going on overseas nowadays, but we're still at war at home. It's just a street war. We are still losing our sons. And it is unnatural for me to have to send my child out in the street and he not come home. So, having a discussion with Team Billy Ray, they came up with the idea of, we'll host this dinner, and in the spirit of sons, the daughters, the girls of the group, would make the plates for the mothers, and the sons would deliver it to the mothers at their seats. So we put together talent, so singing, dancing, we gave away prizes, we had vendors on lined up so that people could buy like soaps and feel-good things. And the kids have one rule for that event, and that is when this mother walks in the door and she sits down in her seat, she does not leave that seat unless she's going to the restroom. She needs Kleenex, she needs something to drink, whatever she needs, you get it. And so those beautiful young people you see stand up in that top right corner, you could see them through a 3-hour event, mingling through the crowd, asking the mothers, is there anything I can get you? Are you okay? And so it helped bring mothers of deceased children together, gave them a place in a space where people could relate, and it was a way to honor them and their children, because many times those children, at least we as parents, feel like they're forgotten. And so we wanted to say, we remember, and we honor you, and we honor your children. Now, all these great service projects that Team Billy Ray was doing, they didn't lose sight of the community center. So they worked really hard at raising awareness and gaining support for his dream of the community center. Now, I told you I don't know how to build a community center. I didn't know where to start, but guess who secured the first decently sized amount of money for this project? Those beautiful faces right there. Those are a piece of Team Billy Ray, working together with some other partners in the community that I'll talk about in a minute. We all paid a visit to our state capitol to have a conversation with our congressmen and women to ask for some money for this community center. Now, we didn't have a plan, we didn't have a place, we had no idea, but we knew we needed to do something. We didn't even have a speech. But in the car, I remember telling the kids, listen, the state is broke. They're not gonna give us anything. But we'll use this for practice. We'll go in here, see how things are run, we'll talk to some people, you know. So I wanted to make sure that they didn't go in there thinking that they were definitely gonna come out with something. And so we lobbied all day. And about a month and a half after receiving that call, I found out that our ask of $500,000 from the state had approved $400,000. Things are really good. So as we jumped for joy and still didn't have a plan, we knew then that the state supported us and they saw the need, and so I am forever grateful for all of those who participated in making that happen. Oops. Now, let's talk about the partners. Team Billy Ray worked collectively and continues to, and me being their representative because they're all grown now, worked with the top 4 partners on this list. That is the City of Tacoma, Metro Parks Tacoma, Tacoma School District, Tacoma Housing Authority, all 4 government entities working together to make this happen. That is generally unheard of. And they said, okay, we gotta make this happen, and we need to figure out if this is even feasible. So they collectively funded what they call a feasibility study. And that study tells us, you know, is it feasible? Where should we put it? Is it needed? How much is it gonna cost? That sort of thing. So with their help and support from the Billy Ray Foundation, Team Billy Ray, we also have to remember that the community is a partner. The community did very well in supporting this. They are the ones who showed up to public forums. to give us their input. They completed surveys to talk about what they needed, what they wanted. And then the really big thing they did, and again, I'm so forever grateful, is they passed a bond. The voters passed a bond that included $6 million for this community center. So we're on a roll now. And let me mention that that feasibility study, once it was completed, it told us that we had the place and the need of the structure of what we were looking for was going to cost $30 million. So we got $6,400,000. Let's keep rolling. Now, with that in mind, it's been great to see that the various partners with the voters are stepping up to help pay for this project. But we can't lose sight of and remember that it's important to also encourage private donors. And that will help boost, the voters have already spoken, the residents have already spoken. So now, whether it's businesses, private, individuals, we need to be able to say, help us. And at this point, I think it's more of a movement. This is an opportunity for them. And so we've been along the path now. Here we are, 2016, and we've now been at this for 5 years, and we've grabbed funding. I've only spoke of a couple, but thanks to the Mothers of Magnitude project, I was able to grab the attention of one of my favorite people, Seahawks coach Pete Carroll. If you're not a football fan, I'm gonna tell you some other things that you should be a fan. Coach Carroll, oh my God, how do you describe him? He is very much the positive things that you've ever heard. He believes in violence prevention. He believes in giving kids alternatives to gangs. In fact, I met him with those beautiful faces next to him, other Mothers of Magnitude, at an event that he hosted at the Seahawks facility, headquarters, where he had a group of ex-gang members, and we were talking about violence prevention. And we were brought in as mothers to show these gang members what the other side of what they do looks like. So we got to share our stories and hear from them and encourage them that if they were leading that lifestyle, that's great, but they also need to encourage their friends. Take a real big, deep look at the fact that it doesn't stop with them. They have children now. They need to do this for their children as well. Now, I'm gonna tell you something that happened oddly in this room that day that I don't tell many people. And when we walked in that room, I'll tell you, on our way down there, and my sister Davida is in the audience so she can vouch for this, we thought we were going to speak to kids. Now, I'll tell you, early on I told you I was the kid that was on the block. So to our surprise, when we walked in this room, these were grown adults, gang members. And a lot of them were faces that I recognized. And it was fine when we got in there. Okay, we're dealing with adults, no big deal. But as people started to introduce themselves around the room, one thing happened, and that is the beautiful woman on the side with the black sweater on. Her 12-year-old was killed, mistaken for a gang member. And there was a guy in the audience, and he looked at her and he said, "I want to apologize to you." And she said, "Why?" And he said, "Because the guy who did that to your son, I taught him what to do." Chills. Meanwhile, there's still a killer on the loose for my son. Nobody's been brought to charges. There's speculation of who it could be. I have a very short list of names and even faces. As I scanned that room, I saw one of the men on my list. Talk about being tested. For a very long time, I always contemplated, knowing that there was a potential killer still walking the streets, I always wondered how I would react if I ran into them. I anticipated running into them in a courtroom. That didn't happen. So I'm sending silent text messages to my sister Davida and Ayana, my other sister, saying that's him. First, they didn't see the message. Then by the time they seen it, they had no idea what I was talking about. And I'm battling with myself, going, I could jump over this table and do something to him, and nobody in this room will know what happened and until it was done. But then I had to stop and said, this is bigger than me. So I need to get through this. And so I sat and I told my story, and I even had a conversation with that young man when it was over. To this day, I don't know if he was the one who pulled the trigger, but I let him know that I knew enough. So I did my job. I developed a relationship with these beautiful women and Coach Carol. And Coach Carol is very, very supportive in all of our work. The three of us all do some sort of community service. Davida and I mainly focusing on violence prevention. Ayana, she does some tutoring and some other things like backpack giveaways, and she feeds the city certain holidays of the year. And so he supports us in some way along the way. And it is amazing to have his support. I can't thank him enough. It's not every day that you get somebody at his caliber to jump in and say, how can I help you? And on a regular basis. I literally go in once or twice a year and give him an update on what I'm doing. And I don't ask him for anything. I allow him to tell me what he wants to do to support. And so, of course, he knows about the community service project, our community center project. He was excited earlier this year. We have taken this story clear to Washington, D.C. I was lobbying at Capitol Hill with the other partners, trying to secure funding for this community center. And to Coach Carroll, with his help, we were able to secure a private donation of $3 million. He's doing some work. This is what $30 million gets you. Now, this is one of our first drafts of the outer shell of the building, so things have changed cosmetically along the way. So if you go to the website, imagineeastside.org, you'll probably see something a little different, at least at some point in time, but structure-wise, this is pretty much it. You've got a 2-level facility that includes amenities such as a pool, a gym, multimedia rooms, and then my favorite, a music studio. I've always said that music has grown. You know, our children with music have grown, and not everybody's playing the violin. So how do we get those kids who are doing things like making their own beats and writing their own songs? And so this music studio is a huge part of my heart, not only because my sons, both of them, are into music, but I interact with a lot of other young people who are. So I'm excited about that piece. Now, if things go as planned, which I know that they will, because that's just who I am, I believe, we will start construction early next year, with doors opening in 2018. This is a $30 million project. We've got about probably $8 or $9 million left to fundraise for. So we'll be spending day in and day out soliciting donations, private or otherwise. And I will not sleep until we get there. Now, don't try to read that. Through all the twists and turns in this very true story, I'm sure you probably noticed that the cycle of violence is not as usual as we hear it. Generally, when you talk of the cycle of violence, you hear about how one person was harmed, and so they harmed someone else, and then that person who was harmed someone else, and there's just kind of this big circle. Or you hear about someone who was killed, and their friends and family go out and kill somebody else in retaliation. And then that group of people retaliates, and then, another cycle. Now, in this story, my story, you heard about a number of deaths. None that were related to each other, but all that affected the same family, mine. With that said, my story is not unique. I'm not the first or the last mother who will have to bury a child. I'm not the first or last individual who will have many murders impact my life. So I tend to look at things from a slightly different lens than most. And in that, I have to remind myself, especially if I'm interacting with young people, that everyone has a story. Some of those stories are better than others, but we always have to scratch beneath the surface to try to truly understand people and support them. For me, everybody says, oh, you're so strong, how did you do that? I just admire that you've been able to get through this. And I say for me, the triumph is not in that I stood strong through tragedy, because I don't believe in that. At any given moment, even 5 years later, I could fall to pieces and give up and just say, forget it. The triumph to me is in how family and friends and even strangers got together to support me in my grief. They supported me in making sure that my son's legacy and name was kept alive. And most importantly, they worked to try to impact the future of young people that are still here. That to me is community. That to me is the reason, it is the sole reason why I'm still living in Tacoma today. Because as far as I'm concerned, Tacoma took my baby. I could have packed up and left and didn't think twice. So this letter that you're looking at is a letter that I received from President Obama. I hope you didn't try to read it. If you did and you can see it, that's great. But then the writing is pretty tiny. In this letter, the president says, and I quote, "If there is one thing we can do to keep our children and our community safe, then we have an obligation to try. We honor those we have lost by doing everything we can to stop gun violence in our nation and to forge a future worthy of their memories. Ladies and gentlemen, if you didn't hear anything I said today, didn't feel an impact, then I ask that you please listen and take the words that I just spoke of your president. Regardless if you have or have not lost a loved one to gun violence or any other type of violence, you have an obligation to do what you can to keep us all safe and to help us remember those we have lost. Thank you."
You have a mic if you want to ask questions or give comments.
Dr. Shay. I rarely get chills, but you know how you and I are. Yes. I thank you so much for your bravery and your courage. And, I'm privy to a lot of conversations with you. I am one of your top 3 favorites.
Yes.
Maybe 10, maybe top 10. Okay, I see the 3 over there as the top 3. Okay, I'm in the top 10.
She can call me and actually get a call back.
I just want to thank you for your bravery. I mean, wow. You inspire so many of us, every day to just keep going. And as hard as we all work, we do look up to you. And I'm pretty old. I still call you mama, too, because I call you sometimes. And just your ability to be insightful, to be caring, and also just to be real. It speaks volumes to what you've been able to do in the Team Billy Ray Foundation and the community members. Just keep going, sis.
Thank you. Any else questions, comments?
Thank you so much for coming. I actually lost my sister to murder December 2012 in Oakland, California. And I very much carry that, like, I hate Oakland, I hate the Bay Area, you know, what did it do to me? And I went home this summer and started working to end violence against women, and I've decided to dedicate my life to that. And you've inspired me today even, like, what if I could start a community center and make sure women all over the world and in my own community are safe? And I guess I just want to know what your experience as a woman has been, and if you're doing anything at all to end violence against women, if you have any advice for me. I've been in a lot of pain these past few years. I've been extremely paralyzed from the event. I have a single mom. She survived and she's thriving as best she can. And I'm doing the best I can as well. So thank you for making me feel less alone and feel like other people share the pain, but also share the love. So just curious about your experience as a woman, and just thank you.
Well, first, let me say we should probably connect, because after this, and because I'd love to be a part of your support system. As a woman, I would say I have to remember that there's a lion in me that's just as powerful as anybody else. And as long as I can recognize that and believe that, I can do anything. 5 years ago, I couldn't imagine raising $30 million. I could barely raise $1. I'm trying to go to work every day and bills. But my son's dream helped me realize that, you know, we always say dream big, reach for the stars, all that sort of thing. And he was dreaming big. And even when he was talking to me, I wasn't sure if he could actually accomplish something like this. And so I think that whether you're a woman, a female, or male, as long as you keep trying, and I'm a spiritual woman, so you guys will have to forgive me, but I can be a little competitive. And I say that it's fight, 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 fight. If I give up, the devil wins. I refuse to lose. So what do people say when you take an idea and you run with it? What's the worst that can happen? You don't reach your goal, but you don't spend the rest of your life wondering what could have been. So take that passion that you have, move it forward. Remember self-care. I can't stress that enough. I got a sister over there that I'm always telling her, there is any given day, somebody can ask me to do something and I say, I'm not gonna be able to do it. That's my favorite word, I'm not gonna be able to do it. And that is because I'm conscious enough to know if I need rest today, I need rest today. I don't care what the mission is or what we need to be doing. And if I'm working hard week after week after week after week, I know how to go in my room and shut the door and breathe. And there are gonna be moments you're gonna be on your knees crying, tired. What did I get myself into? But when you're done crying, get up and try it again. There's a lot that you can do alone. It's even better if you have people that support you. So I might not be able to support you physically, but I can be that phone call and we can talk it through when you have those moments. So I'm glad that you're doing some work. For me, violence, there's no specific male or female. It just needs to stop, period. But I'm also a rational person and know that I can't change everything. So I just have to do little by little. And so your mission is women, mine is young people. Those are our future. But women, I know men. But the women, you're the rock. We gotta have our women here healthy and helping run things. So I think that's good. Keep at it.
I would like to express my appreciation. This is a tremendous breakthrough. Of course, we have a society where two things are happening. We have an old model of society that was basically built by people who made their money trading in slaves. And so it's a dominator society. Who can dominate who? Who can rip who off? And we don't want to go into the way we've seen the evidence of that in the presidential campaign. At one point we had a community center on the east side, the Portland Avenue Community Center. I know we did a salute to Africa there, but the system decided it wasn't worth keeping it up. They leased it out to somebody else. So, and at the same time, I also had the experience of my first wife died of cancer as a result of probably psychiatric abuse that she'd been exposed to, because she was a woman that would not behave, she would not accept racism, dated interracially and stuff like that. As a result, she got all the flack back in the 60s, and I still talk to her. She still chews me out, and somehow in our rediscovery of culture, we find out that culture isn't just us, it isn't just the pretty little pictures that we make, it's a relation with people who are already I think the Nigerians call it the Ara Arun, the people of heaven. And our culture is a relation with those people of heaven who are still here with us. And more, we see older people, particularly Native people and Black people, who are getting in touch with those cultural ancestors, and there is power there. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank you so much for all that you do. It was very inspiring. And in addition to that, what was also inspiring was to see the kids come together. That takes a lot. I grew up here, and when I was in high school, I was at the height of gang violence on the hilltop. I didn't live on the hilltop, but there was a height of violence, and I saw it in my schools. This was in the late 80s and early 90s, and it was bad. And myself and other students, we tried to do all that we could. I've lost people that I knew to gang violence, but we always try to persevere and work together. And I see that that's what you're doing, continuing that. And I think we all need to collectively work together and know that there are youth out there, like the ones that we see on the screen. We just have to reach out and touch and work together as a family. I really do applaud you.
Thank you. My babies.
Yeah, once again, just thank you so much for talking about this and being an advocate for it. I'm seeing a lot of students here as well as people from the community, and I'm just curious as a student myself, what can I do to help this? Help either your foundation or the greater Tacoma area or anything. It can feel really sort of isolating to see these things happen and want to do something but not know how to affect that change. And I'm curious, what's the best way for me to, or for anyone really, to help do that in any way that we can.
Yeah, so we should, again, you're somebody else we should connect after. I'll give you my card. Because what we need to know is kind of what is your schedule like, what are your interests, so that we can plug you into the best space that will work for you. I've had to deal with people, at different professions and then students, and sometimes you might only have, one day out of the month or something that you can do it, or you might say, I can come out once a week, or whatever that is. I need to see what that looks like, and then we could say, okay, we could use you here. Or I can just let you know more things that are going on, like, when we did the park cleanup, that's a one-shot thing. We could say, hey, we'll clean up the park this week. If you got time, come on down. So I'm thankful that you are thinking about how can you get plugged in, because it's important that people, young and old, do that, because it's people like you, it's the attitude like you that kept me here. If it hadn't been for people like you saying, what can I do, I wouldn't have stuck around. So I'm very appreciative of that, no matter how big or small, everybody's contribution. And I think that's the biggest thing is people, they either don't know how to get involved in anything, or they feel like their contribution is too small. And I would say to everybody here that no matter how big or small, your contribution is worthy and it's appreciative. So like when I'm talking to you and I say I could be that phone call, that's my contribution of knowing that I can't physically go out and help you put together your foundation or whatever it is that you're gonna do, but I could be that 5-minute phone call or something when you need to breathe. That's a contribution. That's helping her keep going at what she's doing, which in turn affects the community for the greater good. So thank you, and I'll give you my card.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
What was that? Yes. So Timmy is suggesting, this is my pseudo manager. She's suggesting other forms of like social media. So maybe you're not physically present, but you can help share some of the things that we post on Facebook to help create awareness. If you haven't already seen it on the Facebook invite, we shared a video actually from Pete Carroll where he said, come be a part of this. So if you haven't seen it, go check it out. I do have it here, but I don't want to use up your time. So RIP Billy is our Facebook page. You can go there and help share things there. So yeah, we can talk about a lot of different things that you can.
The hashtag too is
Imagine Eastside.
Which pops up.
Imagine Eastside is the hashtag. So when you tweet about the Eastside Community Center, make sure you use the hashtag Imagine Eastside. I love Tiffany. She keeps me on my toes. Yeah, there you go. Twitter, Facebook, there you go. That helps create the awareness. Because I'll tell you, one of the ways the kids used our marketing tactics, so to speak, is if you saw, you might have noticed that in one of the pictures they were all wearing a picture or a sweater that had the face of my son on it. And so that shirt is very plain. It's got a picture of Billy Ray on the front, and it's got the website on the back. And I can't tell you how many people we were able to plug in and let them know what was going on just by those kids wearing those shirts. Awareness is very key. Anything else before we wrap this up? All right. So if you don't mind, I'm going to take up 2 more minutes, and then we're done. I want to share with you all, because this is another perspective that I think is very important. When I talk about the Mothers of Magnitude, I didn't go into a whole lot of detail of what the Mothers of Magnitude does, but I connect with other mothers who are grieving and support them, and we work together on projects and do whatever we can to be supportive of each other. But through those conversations, I also heard pieces that were very disheartening, but it helped me share a message with people, and that grief doesn't go away. Everybody grieves differently. But you'll be surprised at how people, I lost my son 5 years ago, and somebody will say, well, it's time to move on, something like that. And so I wrote a poem that I'm going to share, and if you can hear the words, does this thing have sound? This, you don't know? We'll give it a try? Okay. I'm going to play this if I can. So that's okay. I'm just going to read. Bear with me, I don't necessarily perform this. I wrote this a couple years ago, again, after talking with some other mothers, and I would say, I'm very much the same, but because I have such a big support system, it hasn't been as drastic. Now, to wipe away 9 months of pregnancy, 17 hours of labor, and 17 years of life, I find each day hard to get out of bed without a fight. Living life after death isn't easy as you've been told, whether it's running simple errands or an entire household. Each step is a challenge without finding a reason to fold. My memory is gone and my cognitive skills have relaxed. So I look around and I wonder, how many of you really have my back? And don't get me wrong, I understand that life must go on. The whole world isn't put on pause just because my baby is gone. While you celebrate birthdays and the many holidays with style and grace, I'm still trying to figure out how I ended up in this position in the first place. Graduations, first jobs, anniversaries, and weddings. They're all worthy and deserving of a big congratulations. But how do I smile for your happiness when I'm dealing with knowing my baby's life has been taken? When I speak of him and I'm traveling down memory lane, trying to cope with this never-ending pain, don't shy away or get caught up in fear, because I personally can't pretend like he was never here. And when much time has passed and you think I should be healed, don't tell me to get over it, because it's always a void that it's always a void that I can't have filled. Now, this is not meant to bash you or push you to put the love that you have for me on the brink. It's merely a message that I hope will cause you to think. Each day I thank God that I have awakened, but I also struggle with feeling like I have been forsaken. So whether I'm having a good day or a bad day, please try your best to be supportive and understand that I appreciate you, even if I don't do a good job showing it. Remember, I'm still me, but I'm not the same me, and yes, there's a difference. I'm carrying a heavy load, but I still care, even if my love for you appears to be non-existent. Please don't judge me when I tell you that I don't have a lot to give, because the reality is, I'm just using the energy that I have left to live. We all grieve differently, and that's a known fact. My pain is real, and it's definitely not an act. You too have grieved for this very same loss, because we both struggle to forgive the killer, like Jesus did us when he died on the cross. So just a message to think of when you're dealing with a grieving parent, it just doesn't go away. And they get faced with a lot of challenges, and even in their own families, because people think they should get over it. This is on YouTube. On Billy Ray's, Team Billy Ray has a YouTube website. You're on my Facebook, so I can share it there as well. I could actually share that on RIP Billy tonight on Facebook. I'll share it on my Facebook, which is Shalisa Shea. But if you search for either Team Billy Ray on YouTube or even Shalisa Hayes, I have it on both YouTube sites. Thank you.